Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content and $7 Productions.
The air in the Red Lodge, Montana saloon is thick with the smell of sawdust, cheap tobacco, and the copper tang of old blood. At the far end of the counter stands a mountain of a man with a massive beard and hands the size of dinner plates, pounding back straight whiskey with mechanical efficiency. In a dark corner booth, two outlaws huddle over their beers, their eyes darting towards the giant at the bar. One leans in, his voice a low, frantic whisper. "That's him," he says. "That's the guy." His eyes glaze over as he recounts the tale. He speaks of a smoldering cabin deep in the woods of the Rockies, the charred ruins of a home, and the body of a young pregnant wife, murdered by a Crow raiding party. He tells of the man who stood in those ashes and made a vow that would stain the mountains red with blood for 2 decades. He speaks of a lone hunter who disappeared into the wilderness with nothing but a Hawken rifle, a Bowie knife, and a pit of black rage where his heart used to be. For 20 years, he hunted the Crow through the high passes and the frozen gulches. 300 warriors fell to his blade. And after every kill, they say he carved out their livers and ate them raw. A calculated act of spiritual warfare intended to deny his enemies access to the afterlife. The giant sets down his glass with a crack like a gunshot. The outlaws turn pale, slide from their seats, and vanish into the night, leaving the sheriff alone with his whiskey. Every soul in the high country fears the name Liver-Eating Johnson. But how much is truth? And how much is a calculated plan to build a terrifying reputation?
Hello, and welcome back to Badass of the Week, the show where we tell the badass history of badasses. My name is Ben Thompson, and I am joined today by badass producer and occasional co-host, Andrew Jacobs. Andrew, welcome back. I feel like it's been a while since we recorded, so I'm happy that we're able to get back together again.
Yeah, no, I think we did an episode in January, perhaps, maybe end of January, and then I did some traveling to some badass places. I think I sent you some photos.
Yes, you did.
Along the way of some guys we talked about, and
saw some Ramses.
Or some Ramses for sure. There was a whole lot of our story producer was there too, and I would turn to him and I'd be like, "We talked about this guy on Badass of the Week." That we were in Istanbul. I'm like, "We talked about Ataturk on Badass of the Week."
Awesome.
Someone else would be with us, and I'd be like, "You needed to listen to our dang show."
We did an episode with Robin Pearson from the History of Byzantium, and he does a trip to Istanbul for listeners of the show.
Oh wow!
And he walks them through the History of Byzantium tour of Constantinople or Istanbul. And so we should do badass international tours, Badass of the Week tour.
Definitely. Oh, it's happening. I want to go on one of those.
Yeah, no kidding. So we got back and we were trying to look for somebody to talk about, and we're like, all right, who can we discuss this week? Who's an interesting character from history that we haven't done yet? And I sent you a list of options. Here's some people that I think would be cool to talk about. And you found a name on that list that resonated with you.
Yeah, Liver-Eating Johnson. I was just like, I don't know who this guy is, but we're definitely talking about him.
That was literally your email. No punctuation or capitalization.
Yeah.
We're doing this.
Yeah.
So I did a deck of, many years ago, I did a Kickstarter. I did a deck of playing cards, Badass of the Week themed playing cards.
Okay.
And one of the things I did with it was I made all the 8s were real life crazy people. And I'm realizing we've done most of them. So you edited the Musashi episode. You were on the Rasputin episode. There's 2 left. One of them is the Hassan ibn al-Sabah. He's the founder of the Hasashin, the assassin group. But the other one is Liver Eating Johnson, and it's a wild story, and I think it's kind of up there with those other characters in terms of just being completely ludicrous, crazy person behavior.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I will tell you, you advised me because I'm like, I don't know who this guy is, and I could come in completely cold. But you gave me some advice. You told me to watch the film Jeremiah Johnson, starring Robert Redford, yes, in advance for some context, and I did, and I'm like, okay. Got it.
Okay. Jeremiah Johnson, he's famous now. Like he's a meme in that.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen that meme where like it slow zooms into like a mountain man looking dude. It's Robert Redford with a beard, and he just kind of like smiles and nods, like, yeah.
Oh, that's what it is. It's not a thumbs up. He just goes. It's just a real hard like tip and nod, like. It's funny. You would think that would be like the end of the movie or something. Like,
no, it's just some random scene in the middle of the film.
It's just in the middle. They like caught a fish and he's like thanking someone. It's, they directed movies a little differently back then. That's for sure.
They don't make them like they used to, and they don't make badasses like they used to, I don't think either. There's nobody quite like Liver Eating Johnson.
It's funny, and we will get to why, but in watching that movie, I will say that on the one hand, if they made it today, it would be like so insanely badass. Like, yes. It's very like, there's a John Wick element to it, right?
Yes.
But on the other hand, they would never make that movie today.
Would never make this movie, no.
And I think we can talk about. We'll get to why.
There's a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
So, but we're gonna do it, and we're gonna talk about Liver Eating Johnson, the man and the myth and the legend. And let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we're gonna get into it. If Liver Eating Johnson sounds like something. I guess it sounds like the setup for a joke, honestly. But like, if that is a name of a historical badass from 1850s Montana that you think you might be interested in hearing this story, there's violence. There's plenty of violence. There's a little bit of cannibalism. I think there's a lot of cannibalism and all kinds of other crazy stuff. So it's going to start weird and get weirder. So stick with us after this. All right, welcome back to Badass of the Week. We are going to talk Liver Eating Johnson with Andrew Jacobs. So, Andrew, I want to tell the legend first. We're going to start with the story because it's one thing that comes up a lot. And, like you said, we're friends with the story editor. You do a lot of story editing as well. And one thing that we've kind of agreed on for Badass of the Week is that if there are multiple versions of the story, we have to tell the most badass version, even if it's not necessarily the historically documented and accurate one. We got to tell that version of the story. It's a mandatory. So
I'm on board.
I'm going to go all in on it, and I'm going to tell you the story of Liver Eating Johnson, the way that it went down into the history books.
Okay.
So the year is 1847, and this guy, it's a time where, back in the past, people weren't as big as they are now. This guy's 6'2", he weighs 250. He's got a big beard, looks like a squirrel's nest. He lives in the wilderness of Wyoming. He's a woodsman. He just literally chops wood as per his job 24 hours a day. Huge, jacked. He's a frontiersman. He's got a big Bowie knife. He goes out into the wilderness and hunts whatever beavers and bears and stuff and like collects their pelts. He's a guy who lives in the Rocky Mountains and lives off the land. So he's out there, he's building a life for himself. He probably builds the cabin with his bare hands, one of these kind of guys, He is married to a woman who is a member of the Flathead Nation, and she's pregnant with his child. And he's creating this little family for himself out on like the frontier, which is a very dangerous and hostile place, temperature-wise, and in many other ways as well. So one day, John Johnston goes out into the wilderness to look at his trap lines, and he comes back and he finds that his farm has been destroyed. And this is the John Wick thing that you were talking about, Andrew. A rival tribe, the Crow Nation at this time, is at war with the Flathead tribe. The Crow move in through this area. They kill his family. They kill his wife. They burn his cabin. They destroy his farmland. They loot everything. And he comes back to find that this whole world that he's been building for himself is destroyed.
They made one mistake.
They made one mistake.
Yeah. They made one mistake. They did not kill him too.
They did not kill him. Yes. So this is what you're talking about. This is the classic revenge movie setup. This is Death Wish. This is Josie Wales. This is John Wick. He's like, digging through the rubble in this movie. He's gonna be digging through the rubble ash of his house. He finds his Bowie knife. It's the size of like a it's the size of Braveheart's sword. Yeah. He's like,
fall to his knees. Yeah.
Gets his rifle. He's got this 58 caliber Hawken rifle. He's got a sharpened Bowie knife the size of a short sword. Most people would have given up, gone home, started drinking, whatever. He goes into the forest and he launches this one-man crusade of absolute carnage. He hunts down every warrior responsible for the death of his wife. He declares war on the entire Crow Nation, and he spends the next 2 decades moving through the passes of the Rocky Mountains like a ghost. They say that he kills 300 Crow warriors, and he doesn't even just kill them. He defeats them, and then he goes the extra mile. He knows about his enemy. He knows that in Crow culture, the liver is supposed to be the seat of your soul. It's the organ that is required to navigate the afterlife in Crow mythology. And so after Johnston kills these guys, he doesn't just scalp them. He cuts out their livers and eats them raw. So he's not just killing these people, he is deleting their souls from existence. He's a cannibal, ghost, wraith, man-eating monster, just butchering his way through the wilderness.
Pretty hardcore.
Pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
One of the stories about him involves he was attacked. He was ambushed by a Blackfoot tribe raiding party, and the Blackfoot capture him. And they know that the Crow at this point, they hate him. They're going to pay whatever they can pay to get their hands on him. So the Blackfoot capture liver eating Johnston, and they take his shirt, they strip him down to the waist, they tie him up with these heavy leather ropes, and they put him into a teepee to be sold to the Crow for what would presumably be a long, agonizing execution. So the story goes that he doesn't wait until the morning. During the night, he chews through the buffalo hide bonds with his teeth. He breaks a couple teeth biting through the ropes. He takes down a guard with his bare hands, steals that guy's knife, and knowing that he has a 200-mile trek from this Blackfoot encampment to the closest town, he has to travel 200 miles on foot, no shirt, through sub-zero temperatures. There's a blizzard coming. So what he does is he does the most obvious thing here would be to hack off the guard's leg with the knife and bring it with him, so that if he gets hungry along the journey, he can just chew on this guy's leg.
It's it's a to-go meal. I mean, you said that's the most obvious thing. I was like, that was not what I was thinking. Like, weren't there some horses around or something?
I would have maybe searched around for some food, maybe like brought a bow and arrow. You could hunt
blanket,
for rabbits or something. Lives in the wilderness. You'd think he'd know how to hunt for food or something. Gather some berries.
I mean, okay.
Yes. So that is the story of Liver Eating Johnson. For 20 years, he wars with the Crow to avenge his wife. He finds everybody responsible, kills them all horrifically, eats their bodies, all this stuff. Okay, now fast forward 40 years. We're in the end times of the Wild West. The Wild West is kind of dying. There's telegraph lines, there's rail lines. We travel into this very smoky saloon in Red Lodge, Montana. And in the back corner of this saloon, there are these two kind of wannabe outlaws sitting there talking to each other. They've maybe robbed a stagecoach. They're maybe planning some other stuff, but they haven't done it yet. And they're sitting there and they're talking to each other, and they're looking across this saloon. And standing at the counter there is a 6'2", 250-pound dude. He's made almost entirely out of muscle and scar tissue, and he's got a tin star because he's the deputy sheriff of this region. He's got his gun on his hip, and he's standing there with a tumbler. They said his drink was a tumbler of whiskey, straight.
As you do.
Which I think is like 12 ounces.
Yeah.
And these guys are talking, and they're watching him, and they're like, that's the guy. Like, he didn't even cook the leg. He just ate it while he was walking. And then he ate their livers. This guy's crazy. And they're looking at him and they're like, whatever you do, man, like, let's not mess with this town. Let's not mess with this guy. Let's not mess with this town. We'll just move on to the next one. And whatever weird stuff, whatever bad stuff we're going to do, we'll do it over there instead. So this is where things get interesting when we talk about Liver Eating Johnston. So this story, the crow killer, the guy who ate his way through the frontier to settle a blood debt, it's a pretty impressive story, but it is the story that Liver Eating Johnston wanted you to hear because he didn't want you to cause trouble in his town.
I like it.
Yes. So when we come back, we're going to talk about the real guy who is just as interesting as this story might imply. The real guy, he was in the Navy. He was a Civil War hero. He was a frontiersman. He was able to turn what originally started as a dark joke. He was able to turn that into a legend that made his town the safest town in all of Montana at a time where cowboy towns were pretty rough to live in.
Oh, so I like it. See, now we're in a new frontier for me. I got Jeremiah Johnson the movie, which is the story you just told.
Right, Jeremiah Johnson the movie is based off of a book that was based off of the legend of Liver Eating Johnston, which is mostly propaganda that was made up in a lot of cases by him to scare people so that they didn't mess with him.
That's pretty badass.
And it worked. Right. He was able to tell these stories, and he lives to be, almost 80 years old because nobody wants to even try him with a 6-shooter.
That's great. All right.
All right. When we come back, we're going to find out that the real guy, Liver Eating Johnston, is even more badass than these stories that you just heard. We'll be right back. Before the mountains, before the eating livers, before the legend, there was a guy named William Garrison who was born in New Jersey in 1824. We're starting strong. His name's William and he's from New Jersey. He is big. He was 6'2", 250 pretty early on. He looked like he was carved out of a hickory stump with a dull hatchet. He was built for heavy lifting, and in 1846, the U.S. gave him a chance to test his strength when the Mexican-American War began. So Garrison signs up for the U.S. Navy, and this is the 1840s. So at this time, the Navy is a little different than it is today. It is one of these places where you can be flogged for looking at the lieutenant sideways.
Yeah.
Very rigid, and William Garrison is there. He's a bit of a free spirit, and he doesn't really respect your rank unless the guy wearing that uniform can back it up with his personality.
I mean, that tracks. For what we kind of know of the legend, this does not seem like a guy who's like down with authority.
No. This is not a guy who's down with authority. Unless
he's the authority.
Right. He likes being the authority, but he doesn't like listening to people, especially if he thinks he can beat them in a fist fight.
Yeah.
So he serves on board this man of war, and he probably saw action along the Gulf Coast against Mexico. He probably saw some battle, although we don't have the records for the Navy at this time are not great. So he's serving the Mexican-American War, probably sees combat, but at one point, he has a little bit of a problem. And that problem is that he has a rageful temper and doesn't mesh well with taking orders from men half his size.
That's a pretty big problem.
That's a pretty big problem, yeah. So this kind of comes to a breaking point when at some point a superior officer decides to pull rank on this giant dude. And according to the story, Garrison doesn't argue with him or like file a grievance. He doesn't try to like negotiate or anything. He just hauls off like with a fist the size of a Christmas ham and levels the dude with one punch. Now, the way I've heard the story, he knocks this dude out with one punch, and he's at anchor at the dock, and so he's in Texas, I think, at this point, and he knocks out his superior officer. Looks around and he knows like this is a death sentence in the Navy in 1848. Like this is punishable by hanging, literally. So, okay, I'm not going to wait around for the court martial. He jumps up, jumps overboard into the water, swims to the shore, runs away, and it changes his name and never returns.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you got to do, right?
That's what you got to do. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he doesn't just change his zip code, he changes his entire identity. He walks out of the water, shakes himself off like a grizzly bear, renames himself John Johnston, which is just, it's not super creative, but it's probably very hard to track.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you see it Johnston or Johnson, it doesn't matter because he made it up anyway. So
yeah.
He knew that in order to not be hanged for punching this guy unconscious, he needed to get as far away as possible. So, all right, authority's not working for me. I'm going to head out to the frontier. He heads out to the Rockies. He's a deserter. He's a fugitive. But he kind of decides he's going to disappear into the heart of the Rockies. And at this point, like, he doesn't have anything, right? He didn't pack his bags or anything. So he shows out there. And he decides he's going to find work. And what he does is a job that is extremely dangerous at the time. He's what's called a woodhawk. And woodhawks are these guys. So much of the trade in the U.S. at this point is going up and down the Mississippi River and the Missouri River. And you have at the time, you have all these steamboats. And steamboats at the time are not like, these aren't, eco-friendly things. You clear cut a forest and you throw all that wood into the boiler to make the steamboat move. But, nothing's automated. So you literally have to hire dudes to go out into the wilderness and chop down trees. So this guy's job for the next several years is he builds a little cabin for himself in the woods, and he goes out every day and he chops down trees, and then he sells the wood to the steamboat companies as fuel for their boats. Okay, fine. It's hard work. You get big and strong, you get ripped, but it's extremely dangerous because you're out on the frontier in the wilderness by yourself, right? And this is a time period where you have bandits, you have native tribes, you have there are people there who will kill you and rob you because you're alone and you have your back to the wilderness because you're chopping a tree.
Yeah. Oh, and sometimes those trees will just fall on you.
Yes, sometimes the trees will just fall on you if you don't know what you're doing. So you're standing there, you got your back to the woods, you're chopping wood, it's loud, so you can't hear anybody sneaking up on you. He doesn't just survive here, he becomes just gigantic, right? He learns being a mountain man from some of the grizzled vets of the fur trade, and learns how to read broken twigs to see if people have been around. He's able to stay alive in temperatures of -40 in the winters. And this is kind of where the story of the Crow Killer meets reality. So the story of he ate 300 livers and went to war with the Crow Nation is based on he's on the frontier. He's fighting. There's skirmishes and fights with other traders, with the people the indigenous population who live there. So at one point, he is there with a group of traders, and they were checking their traps or whatever, and they get jumped by a group of Sioux. And the Sioux warriors, they kind of crash into these guys. Most of the dudes that were with them were kind of newer guys, greenhorn kind of guys. He's already an experienced vet. He's already fought in a war. He's been fighting a lot. He's awesome at it. So he drives off the attack almost single-handedly. But in the fighting, he kills a Sioux warrior with his Bowie knife, stabs him in the gut. And now, like, the battle's over. The frontiersmen are standing there. A lot of these new guys are like, whoa, that was crazy. It's the first time they've like been close to death, and they're standing there, and liver-eating John Johnston is standing there with like a dead guy, and he's got his knife, and he pulls his knife out, and the story goes, there's a piece of the dude's liver attached to the end of the knife when he pulls it out. And everybody's looking at this guy, and they're all horrified, and he sees it. And liver-eating Johnston is kind of a jokester kind of guy. So he sees these people freaking out, and he like pretends like he's going to bite the liver on the tip of his Bowie knife. He's like, oh yeah, and he makes some kind of joke, pretends he's gonna eat it, and then everybody just starts telling that joke. Yeah, exactly. And then everybody starts telling that story, and it becomes a joke. And then at some point, it gets blown up into like they killed his wife, and he killed 300, and he ate their livers because like that was gonna make sure that they didn't get into heaven. And
that's a pretty big leap. And then someone's like, they must have killed his wife.
Right? Yeah, and like. The story is about the Crow, and these were Sioux. It's like not even the same tribe. But he learns that like he is doing this dangerous job. He is in a land with no police presence, no fences. He develops his reputation as like he killed this dude with a Bowie knife and then ate his liver. Like that's pretty hardcore, and it starts to earn him respect and fear, which keeps him alive, right? People think twice before they're going to rob his traps. People think twice before they're going to, try to bump into him on the way home from the saloon and steal his wallet or whatever. I mean, not to mention he's already 250 pounds or something, but he kind of leans into it at this point, and he starts saying like, he starts telling some of these stories. This is psychological warfare, right? He takes this campfire joke and he turns it into his identity. And he's able to find some of these stories, and him and the other people who are telling these stories, they have legs, right? Yeah. Speaking of which, the human leg as a snack story that's like the kind of pièce de résistance here, right? Like this is the horror movie deal. Now, liver-eating Johnston did not do that. That story is absolutely not true, but he did tell people about it, and he told people about it because this actually happened. This was a real story that happened to somebody else.
Oh, he's okay.
Yes. There was a guy named Boone Helm who was alive at roughly the same time. He's a contemporary of liver-eating Johnston. And now Johnston he's a war hero. He's going to go on and do a bunch of other crazy stuff. Boone Helm is like a sociopathic serial killer maniac, right? He is not badass. He is a predator, right? And the story goes that in 1853, Helm and a group of other guys were caught in this winter in the mountains in Oregon Territory, and they all starved to death one by one, but Helm was like eating them. And then when he got to British Columbia, he was arrested with like a human leg in his backpack. And they were like, where's your friends? And he just dropped the leg on the ground. And then he said, I've et better meat than they was, but they done in a pinch. That's the quote from Boone Helm. He killed like a bunch of people and ate them. Like he was a maniac. But that story is a true story from that time period. And liver-eating Johnston heard it. And this is before you had Snopes and stuff to like debunk AI and stuff. So he was just like, oh yeah, no, that was me.
Yeah. I mean, hey, it's he's building his myth.
Building his myth, yes. So 1864. The Civil War is not going well for the Union. They're losing a lot of men, and the fight is raging out to the west. And the Union Army needs guys. They're desperate for anyone who knows how to ride, how to shoot, how to survive in the wilderness. And so we know a guy that's good at that stuff. So John Johnston joins up with the Union Army to fight in the Civil War.
So he's back. Now, he's back in the military.
Back in the military, yeah. I mean, William Garrison's wanted he's gone for mutiny.
John Johnston.
John Johnston's cool. Liver eating, you say? Sure. Sign, whatever.
Yeah.
Sign here. Yeah.
Okay.
What does the LE stand for? So yeah, I guess he decided that the statute of limitations on punching an officer had finally expired. Maybe he just wanted a government-sanctioned reason to shoot people. He walks into a recruitment office. He signs up, and he is attached to the Company H of the 2nd Colorado Cavalry. And this is true. We know this because the Civil War armies kept very good records. So I like to try to imagine the scene at the barracks because this is, it's the Civil War. They're bringing in everybody they can from everywhere. I picture you have a bunch of like teenage recruits, like young guys coming in there, young guys from like the Midwest. They've never seen like a mountain or a man-eating grizzly. And then into this camp walks liver-eating Johnston, who's like 250 pounds, scarred up, muscle. He's got a big beard. He's got a reputation already that precedes him. Everybody's like, oh crap, it's this guy. And he joins up, and they assign him a scout sharpshooter. So they make him a sniper. And this is an era where you have some people are still using smoothbore muskets. He's using a rifle, and he's the guy that like you send out in advance of your army to scout the enemy positions. If he runs into any sentries, he takes them out, and then he reports back. And then when the big battles come around, he kind of is positioned in the back to snipe officers and other important looking people, cannon crews and things.
I mean, scout snipers are still pretty badass today. Like, it's still a thing.
Exactly. So he's scout sniper for the Union Army in the Civil War. And he gets sent to the biggest battle west of the Mississippi River. He's at the Battle of Westport in October of 64. So this is 30,000 guys. There's a big cavalry charges. There's tons of artillery on the field. And you think, picture black powder smoke, charges, guys screaming, fighting in a line. Johnston had fought his own solo wars in the Rockies. He'd fought on a warship, but now he is kind of wearing Union blue, possibly the green if he was a sharpshooter. And he's out there kind of fighting on the front lines of the Civil War. And the Union wins that battle, and they're able to defend Missouri from the Confederacy. So he fights through the Civil War. He's decorated. And then at the end of the war, he doesn't stick around for the victory parade. He goes back home. He
punches someone, jumps into the water and swims away.
Let me find my least favorite officer and jack him real quick. Yeah. No, he gets an honorable discharge. He collects his money, gets an honorable discharge.
Suckers.
He goes back. So, all right, he'd kind of proven that he could handle a modern army as well as he could handle a Sioux war band, and goes back and, survives the Civil War, which is a difficult thing to do at this time. Mm-hmm. So he goes back home. He continues doing his frontiersman thing. But by the 1880s, the Wild West is starting to become more of a industrialized area. You got telegraph wires. The mountain men are being replaced by industrialists. Big businesses are coming in to take over the mines and the fur trade and the logging trade. The buffalo are basically all gone at this point. Most of Johnston's buddies from the trapping days, they're either dead or drunk, or they've kind of sold out and they're just selling beaver pelts to, tourists and stuff. So liver-eating Johnston, he's not really ready to retire yet. So he does the most logical thing that a man of his reputation for cannibalism could possibly do. He becomes a police officer.
Sure.
I feel like sure is the answer to a lot of things that liver-eating Johnston does in his life.
I mean, you're already a badass. Someone's got to pay. You might as well get paid to just continue being a badass, and this is Old West police officer. So, you don't have what else looks good on a resume?
Yeah, I'm qualified for two things. I can chop wood and I can kill people with a knife.
Yeah. Give that man a badge.
Yep, give that man, put that man in charge.
Yeah.
He moves to Red Lodge, Montana, which is a booming coal mining town, but it's also kind of a powder keg at this time. So Red Lodge is packed with thousands of rowdy coal miners, and they've come not only from all across the U.S., but from different countries. You have immigrants from all over the world coming here, people who don't speak the same language, they don't get along necessarily, they have old rivalries in Europe that they're coming and bringing to Red Lodge, Montana. And this town has 20 saloons, and each of them is serving booze that is getting people into fights. So this is the kind of town, this is like the Deadwood kind of town. It eats regular lawmen for breakfast.
Yeah.
bad
Good
news.
times.
I just one of those picture like I picture one of those places you walk down the street and like every time every saloon has like a dude getting thrown through the window or something.
Someone's getting tossed out and then someone's firing their guns back into the side. And...
Yeah. It's one of those kinds of towns.
Yeah.
And so they're like, oh, this town's crazy. There's no law here. Everything's insane. They decide they need a marshal. The town needs a marshal because they don't have anybody. They don't have like a real organized police force here. And so Liver Eating Johnston drops off his resume and he's immediately hired as the first marshal of Red Lodge, Montana. And he later gets promoted to deputy sheriff of the area. Now at this point, he's still huge. He's got a big gray beard now. He looks like he's been carved out of the mountain that he came from. He looks like he's carved out of the Rockies. He doesn't do a lot of policing in the traditional sense of policing. He does like psychological law enforcement.
I mean, hey.
Yeah. This is a good job for him, right? If a drunken miner starts smashing up a saloon or a gunslinger shows up to show everybody how fast he is, all they have to do is hear that Liver Eating Johnston is coming. The siren, the police sirens in the distance, except it's just the boom, boom.
Yeah.
This guy
I call that effective policing. I mean, you know.
Yeah. He doesn't have to pull his cold. He just has to exist. He's a living deterrent.
Yes.
So these guys all knew the stories at this point. This is the 1880s. That some of these like famous Wild West guys, like they're legends at this point, right? He's been doing this since 1840, and people have heard this story for 20 years now. And even though he's an older guy now, they know, and they believe the version that we led with. They believe that he went to war against the Crow for 20 years and he ate their livers and he killed 300 guys. They also knew the stories of the Civil War. He talks about the Civil War. He has his medals and his uniform and stuff. So like they knew he was a Civil War hero. They knew he was a scout sniper. They knew he ate 300 livers and carried that guy's leg around in his back. So they're like, okay, well we're good, man. Like we'll solve this ourselves. Like there's no problem here. Everybody's fine. And he kind of maintains peace in this formerly lawless town and instills order. By
maintains peace by, wielding the threat of, liver leg eating violence.
Yes. Yeah. He keeps the peace through the sheer weight of his presence. Yeah. You're not just dealing with a cop when he comes to deal with you. You're dealing with a invincible frontier hero, right? You might as well be fighting a grizzly bear. Now, here's an interesting part of the story, and this is the part that didn't make it into the movie either, is that at the end of his life, during these days, he isn't this blood-soaked revenger. He becomes friends with the Crow Nation. So he's a frequent guest at Crow camps. They don't see him as a monster. They see him as a formidable warrior and a guy who commands respect, but there is no war. If the war ever happened, if there was ever bad blood between him and the Crow, for the last part of his life, he was invited to sit by their campfires. They shared tobacco. They traded stories. Maybe
they were in on it. They were in on it. I think
they were in on it. I really think this. It doesn't come up that much, but I think that they were like, oh, yeah, that guy? Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Don't mess with him. And, so that's the story, is that he didn't, they were friends. So
I read, and this is interesting, and maybe you were going there, and I'm just stepping on the end of your story. But what I took a look at his Wikipedia, reading it, and I read that he spent his final days in a veterans home in Santa Monica. Which is kind of blew my mind, because you're this guy's out in the middle of the Rockies in the woods, chopping down trees, eating livers,
He's a personification of the Wild West.
The Wild West. Yeah. And he passed away in a home in Santa Monica, California, living near the beach, the good life. He got a little taste of it. And that just struck me as so strange, because Santa Monica is the most unwild place on earth.
Yeah, I didn't know if you had come across that, because I was going to set you up for that. I was going to set you up with a joke on that one, because I was I didn't know if you knew that that's where he died. Yeah, he at some point, he's almost 80, and he's 76 years old, 75 when he moves out there, and it's look, he survived multiple wars. He's been stabbed and shot probably multiple times. You can't just keep policing rowdy saloons and chopping his own wood. So he goes to Santa Monica because there was an old soldiers home there for Civil War vets where you could go and live. Like if you didn't have, you didn't have to, so you could go and stay there. And he spends the last year or two of his life. He dies in January of 1900. And he's buried in a veteran cemetery in LA with palm trees and stuff.
Yeah.
Now, this comes up because, these Wild West guys, they were legends, and these legends, they keep growing. And a lot of the story of liver eating Johnson, that whole mythos gets codified in 1958 with a book called Crow Killer by Raymond Thorpe and Robert Bunker. And they tell the version that we led with of liver eating Johnston and the war with the crow. Most of it is probably certainly Tall Tale, but that was the basis for Jeremiah Johnston with Robert Redford in 1972, which is the one you saw, which is just like John Wick meets The Revenant.
Yeah.
And one interesting thing that came from Jeremiah Johnston is that movie brought some notification or brought some notoriety to John Johnston, who I guess they couldn't call him John Johnston for the movie. They had to give him a better first name, something more mountain man sounding, right? John Johnston is like not good.
It's a little off.
Although John Wick is a John. I don't have a problem with John. It's just the alliteration that bothers me with the name.
Yeah. Apparently, by the way, I mean, they could have gone with liver eating Johnson or liver eating Johnston, but apparently they didn't want cannibalism in the movie. Too badass.
Yeah, there's no liver eating in the movie.
Too much. Yeah.
It's not a horror movie. It's just, they could make a horror movie of this, but and so it brings awareness to this guy who hadn't had kind of faded into obscurity. And in 1974 there was a middle school in LA. I don't know which one because I know it would probably matter to you, but this middle school class and their teacher discover that John Johnston is buried under an overpass in LA. And they're like, that's weird. We should send him back to the Rockies. So they start this letter writing campaign. And they're like, we should move him from this freeway bypass to Wyoming. And so in June of 1974, he's exhumed and he's carried to Cody, Wyoming. And they do a funeral for him there. And like the whole town comes out, 2,000 people there. And gripping the handle of the coffin as the lead pallbearer is Robert Redford.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah.
Cool.
He had just finished filming a thing.
I didn't. I knew about the campaign and moving the moon, which is like, yeah. I mean, that guy shouldn't be buried under an overpass. No one should. No one should.
It was Robert Redford, a couple of World War II vets, some like old ranchers. They carried the coffin. He's buried in Wyoming now. So, all right. What's the final score here? Did he eat 300 livers? Probably not. Did he hike 200 miles in the blizzard with only a human leg to eat? Certainly not. Somebody else did, though. That is a true story. Did he wage a 20-year solo war against the entire Crow Nation and massacre as many people as he could get his hands on? Survey says probably no. But here's what he did do. He deserted the Navy. He fought in a war. He deserted the Navy for punching his superior officer, which is badass, even though desertion is not always necessarily badass. He reinvented himself in the middle of a wilderness that killed most men easily. He survived the bloodiest battles of the Civil War. He tamed the wildest mining towns in Montana. He was a respected sheriff. He did fight against, he won many battles and scared the hell out of basically everybody in the entire state. And then made it to be 76 at a time when, I don't know, I didn't look it up, but the life expectancy was probably like 45. and
he created this legend that outlived him and outgrew him and outlived him to the point where we are talking about it today. And that that alone, being able to tell a story like that, even if it's not true, there's something incredible about that.
Right. And to use it in your own lifetime to make people
affect change. make people be a little chiller. That's cool off. Well, it's funny because I was going to say, having watched the movie but not knowing the full story, I was going to be like, Ben, listen, this guy kills a lot of Native Americans. And
I could feel it. We sat down to record because we didn't talk about this at all before we sat down, and you were like, dude, Ben, I don't know where you're going with this story, but I saw the movie, and maybe we should talk a minute before we talk about how we want to approach this, because there's a lot to unpack with this movie.
Yeah. Here's what I was going to say. I'm like, listen, don't condone that. But also, like, if they killed his wife and kid, like, I get it. You're going to go on a rampage. That I don't condone that. Like, it's, but none of that apparently maybe happened.
Sometimes you got a rampage. I mean, John Wick's been killing people for like 5 years now, right?
Got
a rampage. People like a good rampage every once in a
while.
You
gotta go on a rampage, especially when they kill your wife, or if you're John Wick, when they kill the puppy that your dead wife gave you.
Right. Don't kill them.
But it did make me think. I'm like, you know what? Like, we got to do one for the Native Americans now. I know.
They're friends. That was all cool, man. They're all buddies. Yeah. Everybody's.
But
friends.
I'm like, we got to do someone. We got to do like Sitting Bull or someone. There's a bunch of.
We're gonna, because it's the 150th anniversary of Little Bighorn this year.
Well, there we go.
We're working on it. I've started preliminary research on it, although we have a little bit of time.
Very excited
before it happens, but for sure.
All right.
And we've done, yeah. So, but it's a fun story, and it could take some twists and turns that you might not have expected.
Wasn't ready for.
So that's the story. So I guess what's the takeaway here? What is the lesson that we learned from Liver Eating Johnson?
You know what? I think it's a story that it's not dissimilar to so many of the other stories we tell, in that stories themselves are powerful.
Yes.
A reputation precedes a person.
Right. This guy wasn't just a badass from the Old West. He was the embodiment of the Old West after he, after these legends grew, and, the legend becomes the story at some point. He didn't do these things, but that's what,
that's what makes him great.
Right. Exactly. So that's the story of Liver Eating Johnson. Next time it's a good party story, if you're at like at a fun party, birthday party or something, you can always bust out Liver Eating Johnson. People love it. Girls like it.
Yeah, girls love it. Love it. Oh yeah. Well, listen. I think if you're listening to this right now, want to let you know that we are the video version of this podcast is launching very soon. And if you're watching this right now, you already know that. But I would say I feel like I want to tell our editor just at the very end here to just do a zoom in, and we can do one of those.
You should do it because you have the beard. I can't. You gotta do the turn.
Yeah, it's a turn. It's like the meme. It's turn. I can't nail it. It's so iconic. Where the nod, the Robert Redford nod meme. But a little. And you need the zoom in. So we'll do it in post.
Yes. I'm glad I don't have to learn how to edit video for this.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening, and thanks Andrew for coming on and helping me tell the story. And it was a little fun to
surprise me.
To see you be like, how the hell are we gonna deal with this? Ben, what are you doing? Why are you gonna tell this story on the podcast? You're gonna get us all killed.
Thought we were gonna have to have a real discussion about this situation.
No, not happening.
Right. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys all for listening. We love having you on the show, and we love you listening to us, and we hope you enjoy this stuff. So if you do, please let us know. We're on Instagram and Facebook and all that other stuff. So please do hit us up on there because we read everything. So that's it for this week. Stay tuned. Next week, we will be back with another story of a badass from history.
All right. Stay badass.
Badass of the Week is produced by High Five Content and $7 Productions. Executive producers are Dwayne Johnson, Danny Garcia, Andrew Jacobs, Hiram Garcia, Brian Gewirtz, Frankie Chaparino, and of course, me, Ben Thompson.
Writing is by me and my semi-regular but always awesome co-host, Dr. Patricia Larish. Story editing by Ian Jacobs. Our mixing, music, and sound design is done by the incomparable Jude Brewer. Production support by Jean McGale-Waite. Badass of the Week is based on my website, badassoftheweek.com, where you can read all sorts of stories about other badasses. If you want to reach out with questions or ideas, you can email us at badasspodcast@badassoftheweek.com. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, follow, listen, tell your friends, and tell your enemies. And please leave us a review. If you want to support Badass of the Week, please check out our Patreon page. We'll be back next week with another one.